Hey everyone, this is Mason Hutchinson, and you're listening to Herb Rally, your daily herbal podcast. We come out with new episodes about 5 days a week, so be sure to tune in often. Our goal for the show is to help you along your herbalist journey no matter what stage you're at. We have over 661 episodes, so feel free to peruse those episodes and you're bound to find something of interest. Before we get into the show, I want to tell you about the Herbal Practice Connection that's brought to you by Erika, Galentin, and Sovereignty Herbs. This is a gathering ground for herbalists seeking resources and support to grow their clinical practice. In the Herbal Practice Connection, you will be gathering to share inspiration and practical experience, workshop challenges, and celebrate wins through monthly meetups, Q&A sessions, and roundtable discussions. You'll also be gathering to hone your clinical business and marketing skills with exclusive specialty trainings, monthly accountability quests, study groups, and mentorship opportunities, all the while cultivating nurturing habits surrounding rest, reflection, and self-empathy. In the Herbal Practice Connection, you'll create community within your unique and visionary profession. You'll build and sustain the clinical and business infrastructure necessary to work with clients safely, ethically, and with accountability. You will tend to your passion, alleviate burnout, and develop an embodied approach to entrepreneurship and clinical practice. And you will elevate clinical herbalism as a financially, emotionally, and energetically viable and sustainable career and a sound, trustworthy health and wellness care option. Each month, in Herbal Practice Connection, you'll be guided by a theme, one of the 12 pillars of clinical herbal practice, and that includes vision, confidence, trust, integrity, professionalism, ethics, transparency, safety, accountability, reliability, patience, and collaboration. Again, this is hosted by Sovereignty Herbs and Erika Galentin. You can learn more at herbalpracticeconnection.com, and connection is spelled with an X. I will be sure to leave a link to Herbal Practice Connection's website in the show notes. But yeah, I highly recommend Erika's work. She has a beautiful way of teaching the subject of how to be a clinical herbalist. So one more time, to learn more, you could go to herbalpracticeconnection.com. That's connection with an X, or click on the link in the show notes. So today's episode is with Dana Hutchinson, and Dana is a clinical herbalist with a practice in Golden, Colorado, where she blends her expertise of both traditional Chinese medicine and Western herbalism. It was great to chat with her about some of her favorite plant allies, including Dan Shen, that's the Chinese red sage, Da Zhao, that's the Jujube date. And we also chatted about faux tea, or as I used to call it, Hoshu Wu. She also discusses her herbal origins, some of her early mentors, the benefits of Qigong, and of course, a whole lot more. So a huge thanks to Dana for joining us on the show. I really hope you enjoyed it. You can learn more about Dana and her work at wildflowerclinic.com, and we go over a lot of that stuff in the show. So be sure to click on the show notes to learn more about Dana. Also, before we get to the show, I want to say a huge thanks to Torin Frost for doing the intro music for the Herbalist Hour. You can learn more about Torin and his work on Instagram at Torin Frost. That's Torin, Torin Frost. He is a Washington-based MC, and yeah, absolutely love the song that he created for the Herbalist Hour. Really hit on everything that we were looking for and hoping for in a theme song. So shout out and thanks to Torin. And last but not least, a heartfelt and huge thank you to our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. Your support really means a lot to us, so really appreciate your membership. If you want to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, you could go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse. And if you want to get your first month for free, you could use coupon code podcast at checkout, and then it's only $10 a month after that. And yeah, it really helps support the podcast, the YouTube channel, and everything else we're trying to do here at Herb Rally. And as a thank you, we produce exclusive content for our members inside the membership area. So that's just going to be a bunch of video herbal classes that aren't posted anywhere else. So that's going to do it for my rambling today. Really hope you enjoyed this interview with Dana Hutchinson. And please, if you have a moment, go check out Erika Galentin's Herbal Practice Connection. And now on to the show. Bye.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by clinical herbalist Dana Hutchinson. And The name's pretty close to mine. I'm Hutchison, and throughout my whole life, people always misspell my last name Hutchinson, but we got the real deal here today. So welcome to the show, Dana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Totally. I don't suppose anyone's ever mistook your name for Hutchison.
They actually have, funnily
Really?
enough. In grade school, I usually had my last name without the N. So I think we have a common theme there with misspelling.
Yeah, one time I was on a phone with someone like paying a bill or something like that, and I said it's Hutchison. There's no extra N. It's just one N. And then we got the bill in the mail later on, and they said Mason Hutchins. So,
oh my God.
they put the N in the wrong spot. It's pretty funny. But we're here for some herbalism. So speaking of grade school and going back in Dana's childhood or so, what brought you to the wonderful world of herbalism?
Ooh, so quite a long story, but I'll keep it short
Sure.
for everyone listening here.
Well, we have an hour, so.
Yeah. So truly, my first real introduction to herbalism was in childhood. My father is Hawaiian Chinese background. So I did get a lot of kind of insight into just natural healing, Chinese medicine modalities, and just ways that we could connect with our natural earth from a young age. But I didn't really come to it in a clinical sense until around, I would say, 2010, when I did start to have my own health degrade, unfortunately. And so my diagnosis was actually lichen sclerosis, which is an autoimmune condition. And that was also happening when my mother was diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer diagnosis. I wasn't taking care of myself, and the list goes on. So lots of trauma going on, unfortunately, but I went to the Western realms for support with this initially, and it did not really help my condition, at least. It made things a lot worse. It wasn't until I actually found a Chinese medicine doctor that really assessed me from a totally different viewpoint than I had ever seen. He looked at my tongue, my nails, my pulse, my skin, read my energy, my meridians, and looked at me and said, things are not good, right? You are sad, your hormones are low, your digestion's not working. And I was shocked, right? I couldn't believe that he could infer this just from really looking at my body signs. And so as my own condition started to improve with Chinese medicine and Qigong and lifestyle changes, nutritional changes, I really became hooked. It was eye-opening. And that really led me to comprehensive education and a big yearn to really offer this to other folks suffering in the same way that I was.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of herbalism or herbalist stories come from trying to heal ourselves and our family. And it sounds like, so you did have an autoimmune condition, and I know that is now one of your specialties, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We specialize in all things autoimmune, infertility, and also emotional trauma now.
There you go. Yeah, you're just sharing with the world all of your learnings, and now you're an expert. And it looks to me as if you're both a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist, along with, say, a Western botanical background as well. And I'm just kind of curious, which came first? Did you study the traditional Chinese medicine first, or the other way around?
I studied traditional Chinese medicine first. I was lucky that I got to live in Australia for almost 8 years. And so over there, it's rich with Asian influence. So learning and shadowing doctors in Chinese medicine was very easy to do over there. And then when my husband and I moved back to the United States, that's where I really thought, I think I'm going to, dive a little deeper into Western herbalism training as well, and see if we can't kind of merge both of these herbalism thoughts. And that's exactly what our formulations are like today. It's kind of a mix of Eastern remedies with Western herbs, and that's what we found has really worked for our demographic here.
Who have been some of your both traditional Chinese medicine mentors along with your Western botanical mentors as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first person who comes to mind is Master Hong Lu. He is a Qi master who actually has a practice in Los Angeles. And funnily enough, I actually visited him as a child. My
Oh, wow.
parents took me to him when I was, I believe, 12 years old. And he reads energy. So he truly just looks at you and feels different meridian points on the body and tells you what's going on. And so I actually had the pleasure of going back to him after studying so much of his education and Qigong applications about 4 years ago.
Wow.
I went back to see him, and it was just amazing. He recognized me, of course, and I was like, I'm in this field now. And, it was just really special. I've read every single book that he has put out and gone through all of his Qigong medicine trainings as well. So movement through Qigong, they see as medicine. So definitely him comes to mind. In the Western realm, Paul Bergner comes to mind. I've studied done his entire 3-term course. He was a teacher of mine when I went through the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism 3-term program. And we just have a great relationship. He's such a knowledgeable guy, and I just really respect him. So those are two that come to mind right off the bat. I could talk about forever. I don't know how in depth you want to go, but yeah.
No, that's perfect. I just like to get a little bit of a insight. It's always fun for me. I know Paul fairly well. We actually just visited him in Portland. We actually have an upcoming hour and a half interview with him coming out here somewhat soonish. So he's always just a wealth of knowledge. I want to say he was actually the first herb class I took at a herb conference. I remember it was just it was called Materia Medica. And it was just him talking alphabetically, going through herbs for 3 hours. I was like, oh yeah, I love this guy. So.
If you ever want to talk Materia Medica, Paul Bergner, Matthew Wood comes to mind, Lisa Ganora. Those are just some master herbalists with so many years of just working with herbs. So yeah.
Yeah. And now Paul has the ability to say how to become a master herbalist in 50 years. So I don't know if you've heard that joke of his before, but I love that one.
I haven't actually.
Yeah, every decade he changes the title of the class. So now it's how to be a master herbalist in 50 years. But I really love it when herbalists are able to combine those two different methodologies of herbalism. And I remember another one of the first classes I went to when I first started getting into herbs. I want to say it was Corey Pineshane at Tsunami Books in Eugene, Oregon. And he's kind of like a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist. And he also has a Western botanical background as well. And I want to say Todd Caldecott might be another one of those types of people, or I guess maybe he's more Ayurveda. But I'm just kind of curious how you personally, how do you combine the two worlds together? Maybe you could speak to say the formulations or just how you use it when you see clients and whatnot.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I get that a lot, actually.
I bet.
And it's, I think it's all about trying to do something different as well. When my husband and I moved here, I still was just so immersed in just the viewpoints, the wisdom is a better word, of Eastern medicine, that I knew I wanted that to be the foundation of, what we brought to America. And so I would say that is still the foundation of the practice, is looking at the client's tongue, looking at their nails, their skin, their pulse. I'm also trained in energetic healing. So feeling if there's any sort of meridian blockages that need to be moved or shifted, that's definitely the foundation. Now, in terms of the formulations, I would say that's where it gets into a little bit more of this Western and Eastern combination. I love Western herbs. I think there's a lot in Western herbalism that fills voids in the Eastern herbs. Eastern medicine herbs are, of course, looked at from the theoretical meridian systems, where Western herbs are looked at from the physical organs, right? So it's a little different in that sense. But how I would say I really combine them is my foundational herbs and formulas are usually going to be Eastern medicine. So for instance, if I'm looking at tonifying chi or supporting the blood. I'm looking at calming the spirit. Usually I'm going to put in maybe 4 to 5 Chinese herbs. And then I like to kind of modulate the formula or direct it with Western herbs. There's a lot of really great modulators in Western herbalism that I think do a really good job in terms of bringing in taste and flavor. A lot of Chinese herbs are not the best tasting herbs. They are roots, barks, and berries, and they are bitter. So a good example is kind of like the cholagogues or the alternative herbs in Western medicine are just like that. That's pretty much all of Chinese medicine. So yeah, I would say I really combine that more from a formulation perspective, but also in the Western realm, our clinic does infer lab work, right? We look at that as just another piece. And so that's obviously very Western, right? Looking at liver enzymes, kidney function, blood counts, gene mutation testing. So that's another way where I would say this kind of Western clinical training does kind of facilitate and help us to merge Eastern wisdom into there as well. It's kind of like a West and East approach, I guess.
I love that. And I'm curious, is your husband involved in the clinic at all? Is he into herbalism and stuff too?
He's actually not. No,
okay.
He's a woodworker. So he has his
awesome
furniture building company here in Denver, Colorado. So
how did you all settle on Denver to relocate?
Yeah, so I originally grew up in California. I was like the beach surfer girl. And when I actually moved to Australia, I found that people didn't really surf as much as I thought that they would. And so given that, my husband actually wasn't a surfer, which I was surprised by. That was kind of who I would always thought I would have kind of ended up with. And he was a skier. So I loved skiing as well. Big kind of mountain backcountry folks, both of us. So we just thought, I think Colorado makes sense to kind of start anew and be connected to nature in that way. So that's what we did.
There's a lot of herbalism going on in Colorado. Early on, I interviewed Chloe Hurtado. I think she's maybe in the Denver area. And then I'm interviewing another herbalist named Montague Connolly, I believe is his name. That interview's coming up. So yeah, there's lots of herbalists out there. So yeah, you definitely ended up in like an herbalist hotbed. So I'm curious, maybe shifting gears a little bit. I saw on your website that one of the services you provide is, or maybe it was a previous service, but it's a AHG, American Herbalist Guild, registered mentor. I'm just curious if you still do that and if you could tell the Herb Rally audience what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that I still offer. So I believe there's about 20 or 30 AHG members, so American Herbalist Guild, registered herbalists who are also registered to provide mentorship for students, clinical practitioners looking to get a little more case review or case insight. It really ranges from beginner herbalists to advanced practitioners looking for different insight in terms of their cases. So what that looks like at my practice is usually going to be a virtual mentorship, unless, of course, they live in Denver or Golden area, then that could be an in-office mentorship. And I do offer 2 different tiers of mentorship under the AHG mentorship. So that's the first tier is kind of like the basics, I call it, whether that's beginner herbalism or again, case review. Introduction to Chinese medicine is a popular one that people choose. And then we build onto that with the tier 2, which is a little more intensive, and that's 16 hours. The first one is an 8-hour one-on-one mentorship. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to be certified by the AHG? Like someone who's looking to get their certification?
Yes. I again hear this question a ton. I speak at a bunch of herbalism schools like Herbal Academy and CSCH, and teach a lot of workshops with budding herbalists. And so this comes up quite a lot. And what I would say is I love being involved at the AHG. I'm an active member. I try and speak at their conferences and symposiums. But I would say that it is quite an extensive application. And a lot of people don't know that before they go through with that process. And that they really have to have a lot of clinical experience. That is another thing. I don't know if it's too publicized to go down that route, is just how much client consultation one has to actually submit before they can submit that for the board review. And the other thing I would say is that it's just one certification. I think a lot of people really have their heart set on that certification, and that's fantastic. I did myself, so I understand that. But I do always tell folks, hey, it's just one extra thing. There's so many great clinical herbalists that maybe don't have that certification, and they're still offering wonderful support for people. So that would kind of be my advice, is if you want to go down that route, buckle up for at least 2+ years of full-time client consultations before you submit your application. Maybe try and shadow with an AHG mentor. And then otherwise, if that's not for you, that's totally okay, right? It's just another kind of piece of education there, I would say.
I love that advice. Setting expectations. If you know it's going to be quite the process, that makes it probably a lot more digestible. Then you can break it down into steps. You can work out a goal, and then you could kind of move forward with it. So I'm not certified AHG. I'm not a registered herbalist. I'm barely even an herbalist. I just have a podcast. So I'm here to interview the actual experts. But and I agree, like, you don't have to be a registered herbalist to call yourself an herbalist, but kind of along those lines, like the pros, what are some benefits of being an AHG certified herbalist or registered herbalist?
That's a great question, and how I would like to answer that is really, for me, it made sense because my first clinic that I had in the United States, I was working with 9 different medical practitioners. I was working with an ND, a licensed acupuncturist, an MD, a chiropractor, all these people that cross referred. So to me, I wanted to achieve the highest possible standard within my career to reflect my clinical expertise. So for me, it made sense, right? That was always my goal when I moved here. I was like, oh, this is, kind of what solidifies me in my lens, of course, as top of my field, right? And that's always ongoing. I want people to know that it's not like you just get this and then you're done, right? But so I think in terms of reference from other practitioners, that's a really big benefit, right? Is that you're part of the 300 to 400 herbalists in the United States that have achieved a certain educational criteria that does gift you kind of this, registered criteria. So that, I think, is a benefit. A lot of my clients do actually ask if I am registered. I think that's because of how clinical my practice does come off. I've been called an armchair herbalist in the past when I moved here, just because that's really where my heart lies. So I think that really reflects the AHG cert as well. Other things that are really good benefits is you get great deals on all education. I think that's something that's not really talked about enough. For instance, I'll get quite a few emails a week or a month saying, hey, AHG members, here's just free education with fantastic herbalists talking about really high-level clinical analysis. And so I will just kind of pop onto these and say, wow, try to gain something from a different person, different perspective. So that's really awesome. The other thing is, after you're an AHG member, a registered member for 5 years, you can then apply to become part of the board. So you can then start to maybe review other people's applications, have a more active membership in terms of the AHG education they put out and all of those types of things, which again, I think just helps to solidify your place in the herbal community in that lens. So those are a couple benefits. There's so many more, like free conferences, free events, there's some free case review options. So it's definitely worth it if that's the kind of herbalist that anyone listening is looking to be.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of great benefits. Earlier you said something about armchair herbalist, and I was wondering, I'm perhaps naive, but that almost sounds like derogatory. Is that like an insult, or what did you mean by that?
No.
Oh,
So it's kind of like a term where an armchair herbalist is someone who doesn't really, let's say, specialize in the botany sides of things. So
gotcha.
someone who is, they get the dried herbs in, they know exactly how to formulate them, how to macerate them, but they're not necessarily the herbalists that are out wildcrafting. Now, of course, I am, but early in my Chinese medicine career, you don't really have a lot of the botany side in TCM, especially in Colorado, right? And a lot of these herbs don't grow here, so you
Right.
don't go out and forage for them. So it's kind of like a term used for a very clinical herbalist, right? Where there's so many different types of herbal folks, people who teach foraging and who teach wildcrafting and spiritual energy walks. And of course, I do those things now, but very much early on, it was more of a kind of like a clinical dispensary almost of advanced formulation, as opposed to growing up gardening and foraging and all those things.
All right. Well, I'm glad you clarified. Yeah, because there's like a term, I think it's called armchair quarterback or something like that, where someone's watching the football game and they're like telling them how they should have thrown the pass or something like that. That's like an armchair quarterback. But okay. All right. Well, it sounds more like a compliment. All right, cool. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Wildflower Clinic in I want to say it's in Golden, Colorado specifically.
It is, yes. We were in Denver for about 5 years, and now we've been in Golden, coming up on our second year here.
Okay.
So it's just about 30 minutes from Denver, but yeah, we are a traditional Chinese medicine clinic with Western clinical herbalism as well. And then we also offer some energetic therapies like flower essence, emotional therapy, and then Qigong application or energy healing with kind of the meridians I spoke about earlier.
Sure.
And so, we specialize in one-on-one consultation. That's kind of what we do every day. It's myself. We've got one other clinician who does see clients. She's more focused on skincare, gut health and urinary issues. And my focuses are more autoimmunity and fertility and that emotional trauma lens. We've also got one individual who's our admin assistant and another who's in development. So there's a lot of things we do, but it's wonderful. We've got an in-office apothecary. We stock over 500 herbs, so a ton. Obviously, I'm at home today.
Sure.
And we now wildcraft about 50 to 70% of our herbs.
Wow.
In-house macerate them, and that's where we do all of our commercial send outs and client custom formulations as well.
Awesome. So if people want to learn more, this isn't the end of the show yet. So if people want to learn more, they could go to, I want to say wildflowerclinic.com. We'll leave a link to learn more in the show notes as well. So selfishly, this is going to be a selfish question for me. I saw that your clinic just did a rebrand. And you went through, I'm going to say it was Jess with the Wildcraft Studio.
Yes.
Now, so Herb Rally has been around. I want to say I started in like 2015, and it was a super basic Squarespace site. And it's still a super basic Squarespace site. However, Amanda, my wife, has made it drastically prettier at this point. And so we're constantly trying to improve it. However, I did reach out to Jess at one point on the recommendation of Hannah Afton.
Yes,
yeah, very good. Well, she was, I think, I want to say like episode 8 or something on the Herbalist Hour, but yeah, totally. So I'm just kind of curious if you could speak to your experience with Jess, and just kind of shout her out in her work, because it seems like a lot of herbalists might be able to use her services, and ourselves included.
Oh, absolutely. I could not say better things about Jess. She is incredibly talented. She's a friend now, of course, going through almost a 9-month rebrand that we did for the Wildflower Clinic. And she really took the reins on everything. She was our creative manager. She did all things digital. And really, I think the biggest thing was solidifying the new vision that we had. Very similar to what you just said, first couple of years here in America, just had a standard website, right? And then as things kind of started to really take off in terms of demand, I really just wanted to have a website that encompassed, how do I word it? More of like the art of Eastern medicine. It truly is an art form. It's creative, right? It's playful. It's connection with earth. There's all these things that I didn't feel like the current website showed. And so I actually flew up to Seattle and did a 4-day intensive shoot with her where we
Very cool.
did workshops, real workshops. I taught like 4 workshops where people actually came, and we filmed everything. We did Qigong studio shoots, and she made it come alive, and that's really hard to do. I wouldn't say I'm an easy client because I would just say, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? So exciting. And she handled it, so well. And I think she over delivered. I mean, it was incredible. She redid our Instagram. So now we don't actually post on Instagram. I know that seems crazy in this digital age, but we try to practice what we preach, and we try to tell our clients to limit screen time. And so by doing that, we have a permanent Instagram page, right, that directs people to our website. So she kind of was the brains behind all of this and hearing my goals. And so there's so many things I could say about her design and just everything, our logo and how it integrates, Eastern wisdom with clinical and medical herbalism. And she rocked it, so anyone out there who would like to rebrand your business, your website with whatever your goals are, I could not recommend Jess at The Wildcraft more, truly.
Awesome. Yeah. And I want to say you could follow Jess at the.wildcraft on Instagram. I also noticed your Instagram account, the Wildflower Clinic, is following 0 people. So that's a super power move right there. And I think that's really neat. I've never heard of someone just having like a static Instagram page to like reroute people to the website. It is beautiful. The website's beautiful. Great job, Jess. And I also want to say, speaking of shout out to Diana Donovan. We got a Herb Rally Schoolhouse member in the house right now. So thank you for joining us, Diana. If you do want to leave a question for Dana, you could do so in like the chat or the Q&A section. So thank you for joining us live. You've brought up Qi. Is it pronounced Qigong, right?
Yes. Qi is, or the QI is always pronounced like CHI in Chinese medicine.
Awesome. Can you speak to some of the benefits of Qigong?
Ooh, absolutely.
Where to start?
Where to start?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we've actually got a really good blog post on the Wildflower Clinic that goes through the 8 brigades, which is actually kind of like the foundational movements of Qigong. And there's actually pictures of me doing the movements so people at home can follow along if that, of course, appeals to you.
Sure.
But Qigong really is kind of like number 1 in Chinese medicine. Of course, there's herbology, which is fascinating as well. But one thing that kind of brings Qigong into play here is that Chinese medicine practitioners believe that even herbs, supplements, nutrition, all these things are still applications, right? And so they're great, but number 1 is still going to be that foundational essence. So what do we do in our spare time? How is our connection with a higher power? Do we have a connection with nature? What does our community look like? Who do we surround ourselves with, right? And so these are number 1. In that category also comes in to Qigong application. So really, Chinese medicine believes that with certain poses and movements that we can really start to kind of reinvigorate our system flow. That's like the easiest definition I can give is by, moving the spine and tapping certain organ meridian systems, we can kind of wake up areas of our body that may have been stagnant for a really long time. A great example is the throat chakra, right? People who have gone through emotional trauma, which secrets out, probably most people in one way or another, usually can have a throat chakra block, meaning you can kind of think about it as energy moving in kind of like a circular motion, as opposed to moving up and down. Right. And so by doing some of these movements in Qigong, you can actually start to rewire the way that your energy flows through the whole body system. And so what can that bring to the body? Well, less inflammation, clearer thinking, happiness, sense of motivation, clarity. So many things can come from just really kind of getting some of this stuck energy away from our body, even externally and internally. So that's a little snippet of what Qigong really, really seeks to do.
That's amazing. So when I'm editing this, I'm going to try to remember to include the link to that exact blog post in the show notes. So yeah, people could delve further into it. And hopefully this doesn't sound disrespectful to the tradition of Qigong, but I'm kind of picturing myself. I'm a basketball player. I actually recently tore my meniscus, so that was a bummer, but I still like going on the court, and I'll practice various movements and moves a lot slower than I usually do. And it really does feel invigorating to me. I do know a few people that do Qigong. And yeah, it looks kind of like a dance to me in a way. And I definitely want to explore it a little bit more. And perhaps that could be something I could get into, especially now that I'm trying to rehab this knee of mine. But sorry. Yeah. Oh, that's really good to know, because I'm super bummed about this knee issue. But this is an herbalism show. We're here for the plants too. So I asked you before the call if there was any particular plants you'd like to talk about, and one of them I'm familiar with. Actually, I've heard of the other one too, but I don't know much about it. So I want to say it's Da Zhao.
Da Zhao, yes.
Okay, sweet. So the Jujube date. So would you teach the Herbalist audience a bit about the Jujube date?
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is one of my favorite herbs.
Awesome.
I teach about this so much at conferences. I usually bring in little samples. And I'm actually going to be talking about this one at the Good Medicine conference coming up in a little bit here. So Jujube date is, it's a breath of fresh air is really what I like to start with this herb. I love it because it's warming. That's a big difference in TCM herbs versus Western clinical herbalism, is there's a lot more warming herbs in Chinese medicine. So for all you Western clinical herbalists listening, you're probably saying, yep, everything is dry and cold, right? for the most part, right? So those herbs that are moistening and that are warming in Western herbalism, we keep in our pocket, right? We remember those. Where in Chinese medicine, there's a lot more warming or blood nourishing herbs that are part of their materia medica. And Jujube date is one of those. So I really like this herb because it's a blood nourisher. So it's really, really great for people who might have pale complexions, people who are a little bit colder in terms of their temperature. It's great for people going through emotional disturbances. So Jujube date is one that often comes into kind of like emotional resilience formulas in our clinic. And the other thing that's great about this herb is that it's thought to enter the spleen and stomach channels. So it's not just an herb for the emotions, but it's also for invigorating digestion. So the spleen meridian in TCM, and this might be a little too in depth, but that's actually the governor of the blood. Right. So if you hear, oh, we have blood deficiency in TCM, usually you're going to get spleen herbs or herbs that tonify the spleen. So Jujube date is one of those. It's really, really just a wonderful overall tonic. And so kind of how it would compare to a Western herb, like, let's see, a flavoring agent, like maybe orange peel or licorice or cinnamon. Jujube does just that with Chinese medicine formulas as well, because it's really sweet. So it's a nice, uplifting, kind of floral, well, it's a date, right? Date taste. And so that can bring in a lot of flavoring modification to some of these really bitter, dark, heavy, cold herbs that do also play a part in TCM medicine. So yeah, I mean, overall with dosage with Jujube, you're usually looking around 10 to 30 grams in a decoction. Usually that's about 10 dates as a reference there. But it falls into a lot of our formulations because it's just such a great overall tonic. So yeah, it's a little bit about Jujube or Dazal.
Awesome. Do you have any recommendations on where to purchase? Because I don't know if you know this, Dana. I worked at Mountain Rose Herbs for 11 years, and I do not believe that they sell that. So where do you recommend folks buy Jujube?
Yeah, so we buy through Chinese medicine suppliers in San Francisco that actually get Jujube date from China.
Oh, nice.
So, unfortunately, with this company, you do have to have a license of Chinese medicine in order to order it. And it is the biggest question that I get asked at conferences. I have heard that other companies are going to start to stock this more regularly, like Monterey Bay Spice Company, I believe, is looking into it. I know Mountain Rose does not stock it, unfortunately, but there's also a lot of more organic farming practices coming out of Tibet and China and some of the different provinces there. So my biggest recommendation is to potentially, do your research, try and find organic third-party suppliers. Otherwise, try to look for it in a tincture format, which can still have benefits for sure.
Well, I mean, we could promote Wildflower Clinic right here. Do you sell it to the public?
We don't, unfortunately. No, okay. So gotcha. Yeah, we're not a bulk apothecary.
Okay.
We're just a client apothecary only. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, yeah, thanks for the tips there.
Yes.
Before we go to our next plant, Diana, the Herbalist Schoolhouse member, actually, it does look like she offered up a question. So do you mind if I read this real quick?
Oh, of course. Let's go for it.
By the way, Diana says she's loving the interview. So kudos to you, Dana. She goes, Dana's awesome. My daughter has MS. She's 37, which is why I'll definitely check out her website. I am a forager and make medicines from my local plants, how my daughter uses them. And I'd love to learn more about how you work with the herbs in relation to MS.
Yeah. Big question. And multiple sclerosis is one of the top autoimmune conditions that our clinic actually supports. So I am part of the MS Summit. I work with Matt Rowe, and I speak regularly at MS conferences around the US. It's a condition I'm really passionate about because it's very similar to how my autoimmune condition presents, but just in different lenses with the connective tissue. So first and foremost, MS, maybe this will help you, Diana, is usually a condition of dampness. So what does that mean? Most people who can generate the condition MS usually live in a very hot or moist environment. Not all people, but it's very common. Otherwise, that dampness or internal bogginess can be brought on by our diet, by our lifestyle choices. So things like high amounts of rancid oils, trans fats, alcohol, caffeine, really fatty meats consistently for some individuals can cause that kind of internal stagnation. So really our first kind of investigation is to really see how and what organ systems actually have degraded in order to allow this state of inflammation or stagnation to really infiltrate into the connective tissues. Obviously, MS folks listening to this, you know that this condition can also warrant lesions in the brain and the spine. It can be degrading for the myelin sheaths. So that's actually what's happening fundamentally with this condition. And so Chinese medicine says, okay, we got to get rid of the inflammation. We got to get rid of the stagnation. We probably need to improve blood. Blood is probably weak because it's not getting through the stagnant areas. And then the system will actually be able to flow more efficiently. So those are some ways that we kind of investigate into MS. And in terms of herbs, that's going to be obviously case by case basis, but just a general tip is probably looking at things like inflammatory support, right? Potentially thinking about some of these chemopreventive supplements or things that are really high in bioflavonoids and antioxidants like resveratrol, curcumin or turmeric comes to mind. CoQ10 might be applicable. So some of these things that are going to provide some of these antioxidant precursors so that your daughter's system can actually start to send signals appropriately and hopefully get inflammation down. So yeah, that's probably a lot, but I hope that helps you, Diana.
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, and I just love the herbal community, and I love how I want to say conservative we are when we're answering those types of questions to clients that we're not necessarily working with one-on-one. So I think you provided a lot of tips, things to look into, but then you're also saying, we still have to deal with these clients on a case-by-case basis just to have a full intake with them and whatnot. So right on. Well, it sounds like if someone would like to work with you one-on-one, they could actually hit you up and work with you virtually.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say our practice is now almost 60 to 70% virtual. So we do work with folks all over the United States, internationally as well. Otherwise, we do have clients fly in for in-office treatments, if that's an option as well. But that's all just under our services tab, one-on-one consultations. And you'll see myself and our other clinician who I oversee as options for booking. Yeah.
Righteous. Yeah. Sweet. Well, thanks again. And actually, so I'm drinking Reishi, Astragalus. I want to say I threw an Eleuthero and nettle root in there, and I was like, I'm speaking with Dana today. So So we're not going to be talking about any of those herbs, but you also mentioned you might want to talk about Dan Shen, aka Chinese red sage. So why don't you teach us about that?
Sure, I would love to. Yes. So Dan Shen is another one of my favorites, which is why I just light up when I talk about some of these. I actually wanted to talk about this one because it pairs very well with Jujube date. So these two are really a classic pair in our clinic for emotional disturbance. So I've said it before, except Dan Shen actually does so in a different way. This is a quote clear heat herb, or an herb that's actually going to bring down body temperature. So a good way of thinking of this is maybe someone who tends towards irritability, right? Someone who tends towards lashing out, anger, kind of some of these emotions that can also tie to an emotional event. So Dan Shen helps to just bring things down and move it through the body. Dan Shen, it actually goes through our heart and liver channels as opposed to Jujube, which was our spleen and stomach, for those of you who are remembering here. And Dan Shen is an invigorator. So Jujube is a nourisher. It's a little more gentle. Anytime you see an herb that invigorates the blood, it's going to be a lot stronger. So other things we can think about that might be applicable with Dan Shen are folks who have a menstrual cycle, who may have cysts, fibroids, endometriomas, any sort of stagnant stasis is a really good way of thinking about this. Blood stasis, right? Folks who might have menstrual blood that has clotting in it, that might indicate that Dan Shen could actually go in there, invigorate the blood, and help things to flow a little more effectively. Okay, so that's not really what Jujube does. Jujube is a little more tonification, gentle, warming. Dan Shen in that lens is going to be a little stronger in terms of its invigorating properties. So I also like Dan Shen combined with Jujube for insomnia that's related to emotional disturbance, right? So maybe you guys listening are saying, oh, by the end of the day, I'm just exhausted. My mind is going through a million different things about work and whatever else. And that is what I think causes me to not sleep well. You might be a great candidate for a Dan Shen Jujube combination. I see that a lot. We use that a lot. And then you're also going to have more of a neutral formula because, as we remember, Dan Shen is a little cooling. Jujube is a little warming, right? So kind of that neutrality that we're looking for. Dan Shen in a decoction sense is going to be a little bit less. So you're looking at around 6 to 15 grams. So that's a little bit about Dan Shen. Other things that it's combined with can also be things like lotus seeds in that emotional sense. Albizia, julibrissin comes to mind, mimosa bark, hypericum, St. John's wort, asparagus, racemosa. So some of these.
Shatavari?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I still got it.
Shen spirit herbs that just helps tonify the central nervous system. All comes into mind with great combination for Dan Shen. Yeah.
Love that. If I'm remembering correctly, was shatavari or asparagus root, was that the one where it makes you fly in your dreams? Have you heard that one before?
My first instinct was to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure. So
I could be misremembering. TCM was one of like my gateways into herbalism. Like I really adored it when I first got into it. But and if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't look this up. Is red sage Salvia militariza? Did I get that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
I love that.
You got it.
That's about all I remember. But so I also said, if we have time for it, I would love to talk about faux tea a bit. And I was hoping you could talk about it because, going back to my early herbalism days, I remember going to the Red Barn in Eugene, Oregon, and picking up. They called it, I want to say, Hoshu Wu, which I think is just a different name for it, which I think stood for Mr. Ho's black hair. But for whatever reason, that one was really appealing to me and my good friend Ryan. And so we would make decoctions out of it all the time. And so I just want to take a trip down memory lane and maybe get inspired to pick some more up. And maybe you could teach us a little bit about faux tea.
Absolutely. Yes. And this is, how do I want to word this? This is kind of like the buzzword of TCM at the moment, I would say. It's very similar to how I think ashwagandha took a really big, increase in that Ayurvedic lens. This is very similar. 5 years ago, I don't think anyone was talking about faux tea, right? Wow. And now more and more people are. And I think one of the biggest things we see our clients research this for is for anti-aging properties, right? So you hear a lot about how this herb is renowned for taking away gray hair, right? And it has many names, as you've mentioned, Hishao Wu, Polygonum multiflorum, faux tea, black-haired Mr. Han. I mean, there's so many. When you look at Chinese materia medica, it just makes me laugh sometimes. But this herb really is a nourisher as well. So it nourishes our yin organs, so our heart, lungs, spleen, liver, and kidney. It's great for blood deficiency. And this herb really and solely enters our liver and kidney channels. So in TCM, these are very important channels. You'll see in materia medica that anything that has to do with gray hair is actually related to the kidneys. So of course, an herb that supports kidney channels is going to support our gray hair, right? And another thing you'll see a lot about faux tea is it's really well indicated for blurred vision, right? Or the eyes, if we have any floaters. And if Diana is still here, peripheral neuropathy, right? Or optical neuropathy with MS, where you get blindness or floaters. That can also be an herb that can support those things as a side symptom. But when you break it down, the liver controls the eyes, right? So TCM makes so much sense to me because, you look at the symptom and you say, oh, blurred vision. Well, yes, an herb that enters the liver channel would help with that because liver controls eyes. So that's a big kind of just learning moment with TCM. But what I use this for is life force. So overall chi, overall vital force is really what chi is. It's also really well indicated for lack of libido, lack of sex drive, sexual essence, self-confidence around sexual essence. And that's because faux tea actually supports something called the Jing. So that's Jing. And that's really your essence, your congenital essence that combines with your acquired essence to kind of create you, right? And so this is something that we get at birth. That's what we get from our maternal and paternal parents. And then all of our lifestyle choices that we choose is our acquired essence. And all of that is stored in the kidney. So this is kind of like an overall anti-aging, anti-inflammatory chi tonic that helps to invigorate most of the body. So call it a panacea, call it something that maybe everyone could definitely benefit from, but it's a wonderful herb to add to a decoction, maybe mixing with maybe bai shao or peony root comes to mind. Dan Shen even comes to mind. What are some other ones that might work well with that? Blueparum, fu ling, some of these more tonification herbs in Chinese medicine. And yeah, it's really an overall life tonic, right? The theories and the research is correct on this one, in my opinion. So yeah, I think
Awesome.
that gives you a little bit about faux tea here.
I'm going to run to the store after this interview and go pick some up. And
yeah, it's great. It's great.
I love hearing that it's having like a comeback or it's becoming popular. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it sounds like it's I don't want to say food-like, but it sounds like you could take it regularly and use it as like a general health tonic. So there's no like safety concerns that you're kind of worried about or anything, or
not really, you know, of course, case by case, as we always say,
of course.
Not in pregnancy or lactation, or if you're on, any medications, we'll just say for the sake of the podcast. But yes, overall, it's incredibly safe in the right dosage. Usually you're looking around a 10-gram dosage of faux tea combined with other herbs. So it's wonderful to give a try. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And Diana is still around. And so going back to your MS question, Diana said, brilliant. Yes, that all makes sense. Thank you so much. And then in regards to the last thing you were talking about, she said, yes, she has several lesions on her optic nerve. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really common in MS, is that it can affect connective tissue, as of course everyone knows with that condition, but it also can kind of follow these myelin sheath lines that can lead it to our eyes. And so again, Diana, if you're listening, I'm assuming you are, thinking about the liver, right? Eyes is liver in TCM, at least from this school of thought that we're working with today. And thinking about, with your daughter, what excess hormones does the liver have to digest and excrete, right? Maybe your daughter was on birth control for a long period of time. Maybe there's some other things that play there where the liver has become overwhelmed, right? And really gentle supplements for the liver come to mind, kind of like milk thistle, additional vitamin C, additional vitamin D, your magnesiums, your trace minerals, getting adequate amounts of essential fatty acids, right? Chia, flax, olives, if those appeal to you, of course. So just thinking about ways to support, one of the powerhouse organs, the liver, can also show great improvement in terms of our eyes and their function, including the optic nerve as well.
Awesome. Right on. Well, before we get out of here, there's a few get to know Dana questions. Along with, I also want to shout out the Good Medicine Confluence as well. I know you're teaching there. I want to say you mentioned that earlier, but so you're teaching there. I'm just kind of curious, like, what are you looking forward to about the event?
Yeah, so, this one is cool because I think it's going to be a little more intimate. It's closer to Denver. It's kind of near Colorado Springs on a beautiful mountain retreat. So I think the setting is going to be quite different than kind of like the classroom setting that they have had in Durango for a very long time. Even though that's amazing, I think this is just going to be a little more intimate and special. And I'm actually staying on site in a teepee with one of my employees. And so I think it's going to be really fun. And it just looks like, again, there's a great lineup. There's so much to learn from some of these people going. And I think I'm most excited for my new classes too. I'm teaching about the autoimmune epidemic, which is kind of building upon what we're talking about here, and looking at systemic deficiencies as a potential main cause for that. And then also a newer class that I've developed as I've started to work and support more folks going through cancer diagnoses is a class on biohacking. So this is a buzzword, right? Everyone wants to biohack. And so how do you actually do it, right? What does that look like? What are some nutritional considerations, lifestyle changes, and again, really high antioxidant rich protocols that people can implement to hopefully enhance their cell function. So I'm really looking forward to those, and just seeing all the normal people, saying hi, checking in, and yeah.
Well, Jesse Wolfharden did say, bring what's on the cutting edge, and it sounds like you're bringing it to the Good Medicine Confluence. Are you going to be dressing up for the masquerade ball?
We're in the works of getting things together for that. It's been a little nuts over here, but we'll definitely be there. And are you going to the event?
No, it's a bummer. I have been twice and I love that event, but honestly, we just moved back to Wisconsin, and I just want to chill for a little bit. We're going to another event in September, but next year I'll be there next year. And I just realized that's probably like a couple hour drive for you to get there.
The Durango, it's about 8 hours. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not close.
That's still quite the haul then. Yeah. Colorado's a pretty big state. So I won't be going this time around, but next year. So I'll leave a link to the list of your classes along with just the general registration page and whatnot. So right on. Well, let's wrap this up with a couple let's get to know Dana questions. I'm curious, what do you like to do that's totally outside of the realm of herbalism and health and all that? What's a random hobby of yours?
Yeah, I love that. So important. And I mean, living in Colorado, I would say favorite hobbies include swimming in rivers. We live in Golden, next to one of the biggest mountain rivers. So I love just being near water. And I would just say we're big backcountry skiers. We love, skinning and just getting really that silent slope down when you ski. So those are things that, I love to do. And outside of that, I'm a surfer. So I try to get to surf about 3 to 5 times a year, whether that's California or popping down to Mexico. It's always a goal to do that because I just love being in the ocean. Those are some fun things I like to do, and including, going out to nice dinners and fun stuff like that, and hiking. And gosh, I mean, the hikes here are just so incredible. So most things nature, I would say.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard response for herbalists, but still counts. Great answer. So we're gonna do a question from the Let's Get Deep Friends Edition deck. Ooh. And so I don't know what this question is gonna be, and if you we could always pass. We could do a different one too. And I have to answer as well. So that's part of the game. So what type of music playlists do you have?
Wow. And do I go first?
Yeah, or I could go first if you want, but usually the guest goes first. We'll put you on the spot. Yeah.
I didn't want to. Okay. Funnily enough, a lot of acoustic, deep house playlists, which might surprise people. I love kind of like electric or electronic music. I always have. And so those are probably my main playlists, mixes between deep house and then kind of like the acoustic versions with melodies and singers. So
awesome. Do you ever listen to like lo-fi hip hop stuff or?
Sometimes, yeah.
I noticed that's like really good for me for working, or I can't work and listen to music if it has lyrics. So, but sometimes if I want something upbeat, I'll throw on some lo-fi hip hop. But speaking of hip hop in my lists, I listen to a lot of like rap music.
Oh, nice.
But actually the Herbalist Hour theme song, you could listen to it after this episode's published if you want, but it's basically like a rap song by this rapper based in Washington State. His name's Torrin Frost. He's awesome. He made the beat. He wrote the raps and he rapped it and everything. Anyways, I love rap music, and I listen to. I've been revisiting reggae. I used to be a big reggae person, and it's been fun to like start listening to that again. And I've also revisited a lot of like my childhood, like alternative rock style stuff as well. So 90s alternative stuff. But that's kind of what I've been listening to lately. Sweet. Well, I guess we've been ending the show on this last question. What keeps you learning and growing in the field of herbalism?
Ooh, my gosh, so much.
I know it's a big one.
I think it's a blessing and a curse that I am such a lifetime student. I really, really think you never get there. You always have to be up with all the new research and everything coming out and the new protocols. And I think it's important as a clinical practitioner to stay on top of all things health if you're going to be guiding people in all things health. So I think it's important. And I guess the question was like the biggest area that you feel strongly about in education. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's basically what keeps you learning and growing in the field of herbalism.
Yeah. I think how I'd answer that is whenever I get a client case that maybe I haven't worked on before, right? Like a new autoimmune condition or something that just doesn't really match up from a pattern perspective. Like I've had a chance to work on a lot of mast cell activation cases this year, which is newer for me. And so I think really it comes to me from my clients, when someone says, hey, this is this new thing, but let's break down the symptoms. I really want to understand that fully. And I think that's driven by my clients, honestly. That's what I would say. And that makes me motivated to then potentially help someone else coming in with similar patterns, for sure. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, you seem like a very curious person, very driven. You seem like you're like I read some of the testimonials on your page, and someone what'd they call you? They called you a sunflower.
Oh!
Like, Dana's a sunflower, and you seem to be doing great work out there. Where would you like to send people to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, just probably our website. Now that that's all beautiful and redone, in my opinion, there's so much on there. There's free resources, there's courses, there's blog posts, and that's also where you will find our booking calendar in case maybe you guys listening do want a little extra support with a clinical lens. It's all on wildflowerclinic.com. As I said, we're not really on Instagram, but if you want to, follow us there, we will post things from classes and events, but we're not doing informational videos on there. So the website has it all, honestly, and that has links to all different blogs and articles that I've written and case studies. So there's a ton you can learn about myself and the whole practice there. Yeah.
Awesome. And again, that's wildflowerclinic.com. I'm not sure if I was on your newsletter email list or not, but I did just sign up again today if I wasn't. So do you come out with newsletters fairly frequently, or?
Yeah, we do. We try to send about 2 a quarter, which is just kind of like updates, new articles that have been written, theories and fun stuff like that, promotions on our commercial tincture line. So yeah, definitely sign up, and that will prompt you to sign up when you go to our website as well. So
awesome. Well, and again, shout out and thanks to Diana for joining us. That was really great to have a member in, and thanks so much, Dana. That was a lot of fun getting to know you. I'm not sure if we've ever had a conversation or not before, but it was nice to learn more about you and your practice and everything. And hope you have a blast at the Good Medicine Confluence. Any final thoughts or anything?
No, I'm just so happy to be on this wonderful show, and you guys are doing such great stuff. And it's just an honor to be here and help support the herbal community. I really, really do mean it. It's very important to me. So, yeah, that's my parting words, I guess.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again, and we'll see y'all in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. You take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving text, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.